Hey everybody, and welcome to the last talk from the Epic Games Theater this week, or today I should say, the Game Developers Town Hall. We've got a great group of developers up here from all sorts of different disciplines and walks of life, if you will. So do the whole general housekeeping things, turn off your cell phones, those kinds of things, and never mind my tiny pupils right now. These lights blind me in the eyes. Anyway, so this is going to be more of just kind of an ask me anything, just general chat type format panel. So we've got 2 open mics in the room, so feel free to come and ask anything to any of these developers up here, and we're going to be just chatting through it ourselves as well. So if I lean forward, I'm sorry if that's awkward, but hey, here we are. And hello to everybody on Twitch. So like again, I said, we have a really diverse lineup of excellent developers making all sorts of really great games and experiences. And so I'm here with these friends of mine. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Jesse.
I'm Jesse Rapczak, co-creative director, co-founder of Studio Wildcard. We're the team behind Ark Survival Evolved.
I'm Ikrima Elhassan, co-founder of Kite and Lightning, and we're working on a VR game called Babylon, where you're an immortal baby beating up other immortal babies.
Nice.
Hi, I'm Kjartan Emilsson, co-founder and CEO of Solfar Studios. We're an Icelandic-based studios, pure VR. We are creating 2 games today. It's like Everest and Godling, which is in production.
Everest, which is in the VR booth. Sorry? Everest, which is in the VR booth, right?
Exactly.
Next to us.
Yeah, you can try it out if you want.
I'm Eric Anderson. I am the art director at Cyan, the company that made its name with Mist and Riven, and we're currently working on a game called Abduction, which isn't a direct sequel or anything, but is sort of a spiritual successor to the experience of those games.
I'm Dominic Matthews, and I'm the product development ninja at Ninja Theory. We're working on several projects, but the project that I'm most involved in is Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice.
Yeah, and it's worth noting too that the Senua was the live model in our digital human experience earlier this morning that we released, and also Cyan is in the booth and Jesse's in the booth. Ikrima, what gives, man?
We're not publicly showing yet.
Oh yeah, not publicly showing. Yeah, okay, great. Okay, cool. So again, there's a couple open mics here. Feel free to come up and ask any of these developers questions. We're just going to kick it off today with just kind of a little bit of a state of the industry type question. A number of us have been here for different lengths of time. Some of us, I know, I was talking to Kjartan earlier. He's been in it for how long now?
20 years, I guess.
Okay, great. Yeah, and a number of us have been in it not quite that long. So wanted to see what kind of perspectives you all would maybe have on the state of game development right now in 2016, how it's different from last year, and how you think it's going to evolve over the next year. What kind of things do you expect to possibly see at GDC 2017 even? So anybody, feel free, hop in.
If I can comment on what I feel is at least the most compelling for me, having been like 13 years at CCP for a long time, working in a big company, and now going back to the trenches and working with a small team is just that I think we're in a sweet spot of creativity where you can actually, with small teams, do really great things, and it's obviously helps. The tools helps a lot, and we think, for example, that Unreal is a great tool to create that, especially when you have a lot of creative types, artists and such, that can actually contribute stuff. And for me, that's absolutely the most liberating feeling that I had for a long time, being able to play. It's really like playing.
Yeah, totally. And it's funny. I'll let you other guys answer in a second. But on that note, it's you talked about being at CCP for 13 years, and Solfar is a team of how many?
We just reached 10 now.
All right, just 10. Awesome.
I feel like it's kind of a state of change right now. The industry is going through, partly because the tools have gotten so good. Creativity is really starting to shine. Last year, a lot of the top games digitally were from some breakout teams, smaller teams. The engines in the industry right now, the tools that we're all using, they really allow us to just think about the games we want to make and the experiences we want to make, and the technology with live streaming and Twitch and the YouTube content creators. We get a lot of that out of our game, feedback with the community, the players can be really involved real time with developments, and it's easier to interact with the fans than it's ever been. And I think it's with VR on the horizon and all sorts of new tech opening up, it's an opportune time, and it's very exciting.
Yeah, you talk about that, with Twitch and everything that's going on. Hi, Twitch followers. You see so much more open development. Like it's almost like you can't get away from it if you're not showing everything that you're doing as much as you can, interacting with your community even way before your game is playable. Sometimes, right? Like it's almost like something that you should be doing instead, right?
Are you talking past me?
No, I'm just saying. Oh yeah. Oh, actually, that's true. Yeah. So, what gives, Ikrima?
There's I think a gestation period that needs to happen before we reveal things. But no, I agree. I think we the current state of things is that you want to have your community and your fans involved. I know when I was younger and as a kid, I would have died to be able to peer into how these amazing teams who are making amazing games operate, and learn from them and kind of get even more invested in the games. And then combined with the fact that there's these amazing tools that are out there, would have made my entry into game development and the such so much easier and so much fulfilling. We have the full source code access of the engine for Unreal on GitHub, and I think it's an amazing, wonderful thing. And we'll share some stuff when the time is right.
That's true. Did you know we hired the top mod maker for Ark?
Which one?
Cedric.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Primitive
awesome.
Plus.
Yeah, that's pretty great.
Came through the community. He's our mod technical liaison now.
That's fantastic.
So it's true. I mean, all the time people are making great stuff for products, and those people are a lot easier to find these days when they've got ways to connect with you and talk about what they're doing.
That's kind of how I ended up at Epic, right?
What'd you say?
That's kind of how I ended up at Epic.
Oh, yeah.
As well, yeah. So it's really fantastic. And also I wanted to call back out to Kjartan's point. Ikrima, how big's your studio?
What?
How big's your studio?
We are 2 people. So we have a third hidden team member. It's called Lack of a Life and Sleep. But we've been doing, I think we've done 7 or 8. I can't count. VR projects ranging from the ones we did from Lionsgate and for the Insurgent movie with Kate Winslet, and the last one we did for GE. We still definitely had some outside help. We had some contractors who kind of worked a couple of weeks here and a couple of weeks there. Really, really talented folks, but primarily just me and Corey slugging away.
I'm actually kind of curious if you have experienced a big difference between developing a game versus a sort of linear experience.
Yeah, there's definitely a huge change. Our background, we're definitely, we come from film. Corey, my partner, the creative game director, he's worked on Minority Report and has 2 Emmys. I started in game development doing real-time research for rendering and bringing movie graphics to games. But we love film, we love storytelling. But as we shifted into VR, we think that the future of amazing VR is going to be a hybrid between interactive and purely passive experiences, especially once you get to play with the touch controllers and things like that. And for us, it was kind of a really interesting thing to switch gears to go to the exact opposite spectrum and being like, let's make a full-on game and infuse as much story and narrative and cinematics as possible. So it's been a really fun and interesting journey. And I think for us, the people that we like to work with and kind of our ethos is that we love creativity-inspired endeavors, and making the game has been really, really interesting.
Cool. Any thoughts from you, Dom, or Eric?
Yeah, I think kind of going back to your original question about or some of the points on interesting things in the industry at the moment, I think the creativity that there is now in the industry, I think there was a point in time when everything looked like it was going down the big blockbuster AAA route, and that's the world that you had to be part of. But digital distribution has really opened the doors for really anyone to get a team together and create something that they believe in. And I think that's tied into the idea of building communities through open development. I think open development works now because studios or teams can have the confidence that if they can engage enough people at a deep enough level, then they can make their game a success if they keep their budget small enough. So, for me and for us at Ninja Theory, we're making a game now that we see that really sits in between kind of traditional indie games and AAA. We've got a team of 16 people working on Hellblade, but we're trying to make something that looks and feels as good as anything out there. But the nice thing for us is that we don't have those pressures for it to sell millions and millions of units. Like, we'd love that to happen, obviously, but we can afford to really focus our game on a small, more engaged audience, and that allows us to take creative risks. Which I think is really interesting in the industry now. Is just you look at the people that are on this panel and just the diversity and the experiences that are being created. It's amazing. It's kind of bringing back. What happened to the parappa the rappers of the world?
Totally.
And we're starting to see some of that coming back now through the independent market.
I also think, if I can add one thing, for example, in our case, it's a conscious decision to actually experiment with very different paths. So, we're both doing experiential kind of a product, but also a game. And it's just because we just realized with VR that we had to unlearn so many things, and then we have to learn how to recreate certain things, emotions, feelings, and all of that. And we thought that, for example, the experiential aspect teaches you a lot about that. It teaches you about how to create right immersion, how to get the user to have a sense of agency and believe that the world is there. And all of this then transfer to how do you create the games, because then you use that in games to make them, really pure VR games that really puts the player in an immersive state.
Right. So new emerging markets are a way for you to have to unlearn a lot of things. Like that's awesome. I mean, like game development has always been like that. It's always changing. It's growing and adapting. But yeah, for VR specifically, you have to work kind of backwards. Like you have to all those old standards that you've used in the past. The way you approach things have to be completely different.
Yeah, and I think. Yeah, sorry. I also think obviously all visual arts and stuff are hacking with your brain in a way, but I think VR makes it very explicit that you are involved in brain hacking, and there are so many little things to learn there, and so efficient. That's kind of, we've had situations where most of the brain is actually doing most of the graphics out there, and I have people commenting me on stuff they've seen in our stuff that wasn't there. So,
Yeah.
That's good. It's
Great.
less budget and asset creation.
Oh yes.
I think that's also what's really great for people entering into this space, either on the film experiential side or on the more on the game side for VR, is that it's kind of leveled the playing field, There's a lot of it's so new, and there's so many conventions that don't really transfer over. So, for anyone who's starting out, it's inspiring because they're on the same playing field as someone who's been doing this for like 10, 20 years. We're normally based out of LA, and we've seen really big name, famous directors or famous people do attempts in VR, and it's like it's not that good, right? So you can be on the same playing field as these people. So that must be for us it was super exciting. And I can only imagine if I was 14 or 13 again, or even starting in the industry as 21, this is a great opportunity for you to create and establish and discover conventions.
Yeah. Eric, 2016.
I guess it's impossible to ignore what's going on with VR right now, right? So like last year, yeah, there was a big VR presence, but this year it's out of control. You can't walk 10 feet without hearing somebody pitching about their VR experience or their experimentation that they're doing in the space.
Yeah, and then they don't show it to you.
But it's also like, everyone's telling you, yeah, this is our solutions. We got it all figured out. But I mean, let's be honest, it's in a huge state of flux right now. And like Cyan, we're shipping a game sort of in the near field at a point in time when motion controls are not going to be universal yet, right? Games coming out this summer, touch controls. It's not, the install base is questionable, and so we're kind of in a tricky spot there because obviously we all want full motion control, full interactivity, and it's tricky. So a year from now, is VR going to be half of GDC?
Right.
Is everybody going to have a 9x12 setup in their house? It's hard. I don't know.
Murphy beds coming back.
Right. So it's to me it seems impossible to predict, but it's also super super exciting because something's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, and Dom, I guess the Ninja Theory team might have to drop a little bit of their art budget, or at least on the technical side, to adopt some of that, right? I mean, you guys gotta throw the whole sink at your visuals.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you say, you can't ignore VR, and it's. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. There's a huge amount of excitement with VR, but I'm really interested to see how the consumer audience picks up VR, and how that excitement from within the industry and the vision within the industry can be transmitted across to consumers. I think it's a very difficult thing for us to achieve, but I think at the moment there does seem to be a collaborative effort between all of the main players in the industry to make VR work, and for not one party to make any kind of mistakes that kind of puts off the the audience that we want to adopt VR.
Yeah. What about riding dinosaurs in VR?
That would be very cool.
Okay, so
Riding dinosaurs in VR is very important to us. What I was going to say though is about VR. I mean, I've kind of been working in AR and VR for the past 4 years because I was on HoloLens before this, and until I experienced motion control and positional 3D audio in VR, I wasn't as excited about it as I am now. And I think that getting past just the display and the head tracking and doing these experiences, creating experiences that have direct control, direct sensory input for the user is the real game changer. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen in audio next with VR, because to me that's 50% of the experience. And if it's just cool HMD graphics, you're not really in it, And that's kind of the stuff that we're thinking about for ARC, because we don't want to just make the game VR. We don't think that's a good experience because, it's set up to run around a huge island and it doesn't translate very well exactly. So we're thinking about ways to leverage motion controls and audio and all of the content we do have in our IP and adapt it to VR. If anybody's played ARC on Oculus, right now we have an implementation. It's interesting, but we didn't spend a lot of time on it, and so it can be nausea-inducing. So it's very important, I think, to design the right experiences for VR and really embrace this change rather than just doing it for the sake of saying you have a VR experience. Not that anyone is, I'm just saying there's a lot of that, because it's easy to get into the tools. You guys have made it so easy, actually, honestly, to...
You point at me, I had nothing to do with it.
Well, just Unreal Engine and, and Valve and Oculus, the tools are so easy to get into now, and now it's like developing something that's meaningful and actually embraces this technology in a new way is the hard part. Not really, like you were saying with the directors, in Hollywood, it's like, just because you know how to make a great game doesn't mean you're going to jump in and make an awesome VR experience.
Totally. And you have to kind of think about that up front too, right? You say we make it easy for VR developers, to kind of get in and add VR to your game. But it's not really like the whole Me Too multiplayer thing we saw in the 2000s, right? Where it's like every game had to have multiplayer when it shipped, even if it was a bad experience, it has to have it, right? You can't just tack VR on. You have to think about every little design aspect.
Yeah, I also think, when you mentioned 2016, I think it's very important to realize that, this is a longer haul. And, I remember, I think I was at GDC here in 2003. There was a small section about mobile gaming, and people were kind of laughing at it. What do you think they're going to do? And, then it completely exploded. And it took a while. And I think the important lessons from there is that, we're probably in the first generation that are going to design products that we think is what VR is. And then we'll go to the second generation where we are actually going to do what VR is really about. And there's no way to go directly there. You have to go through these cycles. It's a little bit like the console cycles. The first games that come out, they're using the platform a little bit, but that later on people are really experienced with the platform. They can do amazing stuff. So late in the platform cycle, you get better and better games.
Oh yeah.
And even though the processing power is going down, and I think the same is going to go with VR. Is that it will take a couple of years for people to realize exactly what it is.
Yeah. The unfortunate part with that too is that means that a lot of people might have a subpar experience up front because we're right there at the forefront of everything shipping, right? And so it's even more imperative for people to deliver quality now for the longevity of it.
Yeah. And the tools too. I think that's going to play a huge key role, in people creating amazing experiences. I think in any creative endeavor, cutting down your iteration times, from idea to having something tangible, just exponentially increases the end result of the quality of what you're doing. And, I remember when we were on our DK1 Kickstarter days, like how painful it was to get, a VR experience up and running. And, and now you fast forward and, being able to edit in VR has kind of been a dream for, since day one. And, we'd internally, Corey had made a makeshift level designer as we were making the one of the prototypes for the game. And, the quality of work that was being produced just went up a level, when you can be in VR, do layout and things like that. And now, the engine, Unreal, actually does that on a full scale. And then there's so many things like that, down the road. Like, our friends at Oculus Story Studio, they have a really painful time because they animate in Maya and then they have to export it out to Unreal and things like that to test it, to do dailies, and it's such a long process. And you fast forward a year from now when, the animators can animate and then jump into VR, and that to me is going to be a really exciting thing. And that's, I think, when we're going to really discover awesome, unique VR experiences.
Cool. I've got a couple questions in here from the chat. Feel free to grab the mics in here too if you have anything for anybody. But one thing that's really important to a lot of aspiring developers or just developers that are trying to ship a product is team building, right? Like how you actually establish a quality team that you'll gel with. Anybody have any thoughts on the best way to actually assemble a team, or how did you guys put your teams together? How do you know who you're going to work with? Because game development is not simple, right? There's a lot of times that are extremely frustrating. So you've got to get some people that you can kind of trust, that you can kind of bounce ideas off of, and you can really go through some difficult times with as well.
I think a lot of it, or for us on Hellblade, certainly is about having the right attitude of questioning the way that things have always been done, and trying to find new and innovative ways to deliver quality. So I think finding people that have that kind of attitude of not sacrificing on quality, but just finding a different way to achieve it, is something that's been really important to us, and having that run through your team, I think makes everyone kind of want to up their game to achieve the same level of quality as everyone else, and kind of not be the weak link.
And I think passion is a huge thing. I'm thinking about the art team we have on Abduction, and some of the newer hires. I hired them because they were essentially doing fan art. They were big fans of the Myst and Riven games and doing really quality work in Unreal. So I knew they knew the tools. But like passion has never been a question. The team is, I'm speaking from a position of being in crunch mode and have been in crunch mode for some time. But just so proud of the energy everybody's putting into the project, and everyone really cares.
Is that the new name for crunch? Is passion?
Sure.
We're going into passion mode, guys.
We'll say yes.
Passion mode.
I can say in our case, our company is founded on a core of we are like 3 co-founders that know each other for instance, forever, and we don't really need to talk to communicate. Just look at each other, and we know how to work together. But I think what we have done is complement it also with relatively junior and young people that are full of ideas and creativity, and we feel a little bit like vampires sucking their blood to keep ourselves younger. But I think it's a good combination, because when you have an experienced core and you have people that are really passionate and willing to learn, they learn fast and they do great things very quickly.
So we've got attitude, passion, trust with velocity, and vampirism.
It's really, really good question. To concur with what everyone is saying, I think for us, there's some things that we've realized that you can't instill in people, so we look for them, like it's something that that person has to be on their own or want to be on their own, and that's definitely like passion and a drive, and we do what we do because we love it, and it's not a job for us, and it's not a justification for crunch mode or any of that stuff, but I think we like working with people who are doing this because out of a choice, not just because of a job, and the people that we found who've gelled really well with us have been, to steal a phrase from IDEO, it's that like we really like T-shaped people. So everyone on our team can do multiple things, or even the contractors we hire. So you're really experts. Corey, we always use Corey as an example. Is world class.
He's your only other guy, right?
What's that?
You said you use Corey as an example, but he's the only example you have.
Other than me, but that would be narcissistic. Right, cool. So, and some of the contractors we're and some of the people that we're trying to hire that I'm not going to mention, so no one else steals them. Corey's world class VFX. Unbelievably amazing, super fast. Every other artist that has met him or worked with him is impressed by the quality of work that he does at speed, so it's like 10 people in one. But, he also wanted to set up Confluence wiki thing so we could graduate beyond Notepad. And of course, I was doing a bunch of dev technical work, and the idea of staging servers on AWS wasn't really high on my priority list. So over a Saturday, Sunday, he learned how to stage a server on AWS, set up Linux, set up MySQL, set up the whole thing all by himself, and I was like, that's amazing. And so that enables us to work really fast and do these big projects on really small teams.
Mm-hmm. And I would say too, in addition to all this stuff, if you're the one doing the team building, a lot of self-reflection is involved, like what your strengths and weaknesses are, and a lot of times it's important to know what type of people you don't work well with, and failure is good. It teaches you what wasn't working, and it helps you course correct in the future. So try to work with all types of people beyond just what their skill set is. There's a lot of talented people out there, but you also have to have the people that have the right attitude that aligns with the team culture you want, that have the right even sleep schedule. Some of us work really long or strange hours, and so I think it's important to do a lot of sort of soul searching and and think, what kind of team am I trying to build? Not just talented people, but what's the culture and what's our overall goal? And I think just experience of working with different people over the years, it's not something you can just instantly make a great team unless you know people.
Just add water.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, people think we came out of nowhere for ARC, but in reality, all of us have worked together for over a decade, probably like some of you guys have with your teams. And we know each other, we know we're the people we like to work with, and we have all of our pluses and minuses, and it's what makes you be able to go fast. But you can't just start up fresh and it's your first project and you're going to build the most amazing team. So don't be afraid to try working with different people.
I really like what you say about picking people that are different than you. I've been in situations before where I've chosen teammates that are just like me. So I'm like, oh, this guy's like me. I can get along with that, right? And then you find out that you have a little bit of redundancy, and then you might work just a little bit differently than each other, doing the same kinds of things, and then you don't work well together at all, right?
Butting heads.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's a great answer. Yay, we got a question up here. What's up?
How you doing? Other than drawing inspiration from other colleagues in the industry, where else do you guys go to draw your information and inspiration? And additionally, with so many different creative people on teams, how do you go about idea selection? Whose idea is maybe better than somebody else's?
So the question is, where do you go to find people, and how do you select?
No, where are you drawing different areas of inspiration from?
Oh, okay. Inspiration.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also about idea selection.
And idea selection.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
So we don't tend to take inspiration from too many other games. Like, we like to look in other places, in film and art and anything really, and we try and bring all of those elements together into a game. So in DMC, there's quite a lot of inspiration from classical art and from surrealist art that went into the making of that game. Because we kind of have the attitude that if it's in someone else's game, then it's already been done. In terms of like idea selection, then an idea can come from anyone, but in our team we have Tamim Antoniades, who's the creative director of the studio, but also on Hellblade, and ultimately it's his vision for the game, so he has that kind of final say, but I would say that's an incredibly useful thing to have, because you know where that vision's coming from, you have that one person that holds it, and then it's up for everyone else to really try and execute on that vision, which allows you to be really quite productive.
That's very similar to the way things are at Cyan. Rand Miller, who Atris from the original Myst game, is sort of the one steering the ship, and everybody else still has free reign to take ideas and throw them on the floor and beat them up and try and improve them. But at the end of the day, it's his call, and you kind of need that. Otherwise, you have too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, I think I mean in our case, at least for the current products that we were producing now, we were only 3 when those were sort of conceived, and at that point it's completely organic. You can't really say where any idea is coming from. But we would really like to have a more formalized process for it, but it's always difficult to establish one. But we try to encourage like a creative process, and like really want all people to contribute to the idea as much as possible. It's very important, I think.
Cool. We have it a little bit easier with just 2 people, so we just argue until one of us is tired. But more seriously, I think, Corey, for his inspiration, he has a huge library that he's been collecting over decades, which is unbelievable, of all sorts of imagery. We try to draw ideas from everywhere. And as far as idea selection, I think a big thing for us, is that, it's making something is an easy way to end a discussion or a debate if this works or this doesn't work. And when you have people who are really fast at doing things, then it's a really easy thing to be like, oh, I don't think this will work, or I think this will work, we should do this and not. And if you could just do something to show the idea, that goes a long way. But and then ultimately, Corey's the creative director on the game, so the creative and concept, has final, say of like what this is going to be, and then I do all the game design and the gameplay. And so anything that involves that, kind of have final say. But with two people, it's really easy to have that back and forth.
Yeah, with creative, Chance. You gave me that thing and I forgot about it.
That. I don't think.
Just kidding. With creative decisions, I think that it's important to establish a vision that everybody can follow. And depending on what you're going for, you need to, for yourself, be able to define your goal, right? And what type of thing, product, experience, whatever you're trying to create. And then whether you're taking ideas from other people or coming up with them yourself, I think it's really important. I think early in my career, I was really afraid to share my ideas with other people. But the longer I've been in the industry, the more I've realized the importance of telling people what I'm doing, trying to tell the story of the product we're making and see what feedback they have, see if they understand the creative decisions that we're making or what we're trying to do. And then opening it up to the team, it's ideas do come from anywhere, and structuring brainstorms and prototypes around those ideas and setting up some filter criteria on what makes an idea successful, literally columns. We want these things to be satisfied, and do these ideas like meet these criteria, yes or no, stack ranking ideas. I think you can really take feedback from not just the team, but the community. We take a lot of feedback from the community in our game and see if the ideas that you haven't thought of before that just come out of the blue really fit into what you're trying to do.
That whole plan.
Yeah, and at that point it comes down to honing the direction and the ideas and making sure that they fit, and making the decision on whether or not to integrate them. And prototyping, trying things out, I second the idea that really prototyping and showing things is one of the best ways to try out ideas. And a lot of times if something's more expensive, just writing up paragraphs or descriptions of the top ideas and running them by everybody to kind of like filter them down can really help before you dive into like a prototype. But actions definitely speak louder than words on ideas, so I'm a fan of trying things out in a kind of a fast-paced method and seeing how they stick. So.
Cool. Another question?
Hey, yeah. So obviously mass market VR in its current guise is obviously relatively young, but we're already starting to see like a lot of rule sets coming about what you should and shouldn't do. The head movement has to be one-to-one. You can't turn the character without it being their own volition and that kind of thing. One of the things I'm curious about is how much those of you working in VR are finding either kind of additional rules that aren't really being banded around so much that you're kind of internally sticking to, but also how much you're finding you can kind of bend or break those rules, if at all. Whether there are kind of things that you can say, yeah, that's technically the best thing, but really from our experience, people get by fine if the frame rate drops to 58 or whatever that kind of thing is.
Some of those things are not really. I mean, you should really have a high frame rate, but the
Yeah,
specific
I
example.
I'd say there's kind of those close-end issues like frame rate.
Yeah, I think that there's certain things like that are you shouldn't break them because they're like, physiological limitations of the technology. People, the lower the frame rate, the more people are going to get nauseous and stuff like that. So you should really try to stick to those guidelines if you're trying to appeal to the widest audience. And I think some of the VR stores actually have even comfort ratings, right?
Right.
It's like, so
It's like pillow.
the type of things you're doing in your experience too, some people fall into different categories of gamers or audience. So if you're designing a roller coaster VR experience, a lot of people will just disregard that because they know that they're going to be throwing up at the end of that experience, And so I think it's important to think about who you're targeting your experiences to know what rules you can break in the area of your product, really.
Yeah, there's definitely like some rules that are just hard set. Frame rate. I mean that's so fundamental. I wouldn't have even thought of it until you brought it up. But those things I think are a very small subset. They're more just kind of like, it's the baseline, right? You have to hit frame rate. Like it's not third. If like you were making a game and the frame rate was 15, that'd be kind of terrible. So 30 is kind of like a minimum for VR. It's 90. But outside of that, I think there's certain things that we're learning. That we've been doing this for 3 years or however long, and that are like generally kind of stay away from it. Here be dragons, so like head movement, things like that. But I think it's still a wide open area there. I think people haven't learned how to bend the rules in the right way. I'm constantly seeing stuff that I thought would be like bad or terrible or constantly to this day, and our prototypes and other people's stuff. A great example is the Eagle game, I think, by Ubisoft. When I first saw that, I was like, oh, Jesus, that is a horrible idea. I'm going to instant nausea. Super comfortable, And they've done a couple of things in there to kind of to make that really well. So I think that's why it's really ripe for experimentation and things like that. And the best way in VR is just to try a bunch of things and experiment, and you'll stumble on some stuff that's counterintuitive. That works.
Yeah, I want to completely agree with that. Is that there's certain fundamental rules that have been established by a lot of sick people, and working in this, you get even more sensitive, or at least I do. I get conditioned. Like I sometimes just see things that will make me sick, and I just don't come near them. But it's very important to keep trying to break those rules because, the fundamental, for example, problem of locomotion. I mean, we hit our head on the walls so many times trying to get it. No, we haven't cracked the problem, but you must try, because while you try, you discover all kinds of stuff, and so you shouldn't give up on that.
Yeah, to the locomotion point, that's probably the one I can speak most directly to, because our game, in the style of adventure, exploration adventure games, it's an open world. So when we start talking about VR locomotion in a space like that, it's practically worst case scenario. But we actually stumbled into a fairly elegant solution that mapped with some things we were already doing in our game to appeal to casual gamers, people who grew up playing Mist and Riven, which are point and click, bubble vision. We were already mapping the entire game with what we call nodes, so that people who weren't avid, first-person gamers could play the entire game by clicking just Mist style, and the camera would interpolate from one point to the next. And we thought, well, what if we tried mapping that to more VR-friendly locomotion, where we can use our existing node network, and instead of flying the player from one point to the next, kind of either warp them or warp them in small chunks and sort of step without moving the camera, but just sort of teleport the camera one step at a time. And it turns out that it works really, really well. So it's not that we didn't crack the code, but we got very, very lucky because we were already doing work that sort of was tangential to that. So we'll see how it works out. But the thing is, there are no conventions right now. I mean, anybody who plays a first-person shooter knows WASD and a mouse, right? That sort of thing doesn't exist for VR at all right now. It's a wide open field.
Yeah, I think a lot of those things that are more cemented are the technical constraints, right? And a lot of the mechanics and how people interact with games. We're going to get down to those, core archetypes, styles of play. There'll be, particular apps that do it really well, and you'll see a lot of people kind of follow and work across that formula a little bit. But yeah, it's we're seeing the translation thing. Locomotion has been a tough one because of the lack of, you can't feel gravity or acceleration, right? But even when you talk to like Mike Fricker and Nick Donaldson, them adding the grid as a point of reference in the VR editor, when you move around, you kind of swim through the space. Just having that grid as a point of reference removes all like thought of you feeling like you're swimming when you're not, right? So just little tiny things like that are going to show up, and we're going to iterate on those, I think, year over year until we have those standards.
Cool. Thank you.
There's also another component too that I think, at least on the more for the film narrative side of things, and I think it applies to the games as well for VR, is that the other half of that equation is we haven't learned how to view or watch VR either, right? So there's conventions.
Or record it and show it. Yeah.
Or record it and show it. Yes. You're officially gonna be the first person to see the demo. You don't think about it, but there's a convention on how we watch movies. Through the evolution of movies from the 20s to today. Right. There's certain things that we expect, and as filmmakers, you work within those constraints and you push outside of those constraints or push outside those boundaries, but it's within that context. And I think a lot of these problems that we're having with VR is that other side of that equation hasn't really been established yet. There's not been enough people watching, experiencing VR, and once that process happens, I think it'll also become a lot easier to create new conventions that kind of work across the board.
All right, thank you.
Yes. Next question.
Hello. So I guess my question is more focused towards Dominic and the Hellblade developer diaries, but if anyone else can contribute. So when you release them, they're super high quality. They're kind of down and dirty inside the engine, showing off technical features and like really useful for people like us. We send the link around our studio and everyone watches them and learns a heck of a lot from them. So first of all, thank you for doing those, but also because they're so high quality and probably time consuming to edit and get right, like what do you find the pickup is worth it from releasing those, and who are watching those developer diaries? Are the consumers of Hellblade seeing them and finding them interesting as well?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people in the industry that are watching them. So yeah, the industry is our core demographic now for Hellblade. That's our core audience. No, yeah, is it worth it? Yeah, I think it is. I mean, time will tell whether it's worth it doing those. But it's kind of based on the idea that when we first started Hellblade, we thought about how we could do things differently. Again, sort of in terms of development, we asked that question, but also in terms of all of the publishing aspects. And I really believe in the idea of if you give your audience something that they value for free, then you can engage people at a deeper level. And take them. The idea is that we take people on the development journey with us, so that by the time the game comes out, it's something people feel like they've been part of. And I know I get that feeling when I watch making ofs of games and of movies. There's just some special feeling, I think, about seeing someone talk passionately about something they've created, and it gives the end product, I think, added meaning. So that's really the idea behind it. And actually, you'd be surprised at how straightforward it is to make a development diary like that. Like it doesn't. We have an in-house video editor who also happens to be the actress playing Senua, our protagonist. So she kind of spends half of her time making those videos and half of her time in a mocap suit in our boardroom. One of the points that I wanted to raise actually is that I think just how much you can do with very little in terms of resources, not just in terms of creation of the game, but now the marketing channels that are available to developers, like YouTube and Twitch and Twitter.
Hi, Twitch followers.
It's free, it's all it takes is for you to create engaging assets, and I genuinely believe that gamers and our fans want to understand how games are made, and it's scary. It's scary to do that because. When you go out there and go, look, we're going to show you part of the game, and it's not finished, it's at very early stages, you have to have the faith that people will trust you, trust that what you're showing is early stages, and you understand that it's not complete, but it's on the road to being something that we hope is very special. And I think the trend in open development at the moment is educating players in how games are made, and I think that's only a good thing for the industry, because it will allow people to open the doors more, be more confident in showing parts of the game at different stages of development. But also when it comes to things like crowdfunding, I think it will give people a greater understanding of the level of work and time and effort that goes into creating every element of the game. And thank you for watching the development diaries.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks. Yes, next
Hey,
question.
that's kind of interesting because that segues into my question. So given with this age of early access, and I'm sure this answer will be different for all of you, what are the prerequisites or requirements that you think your game should have before being ready to show to the public or be made available for early access? In our case, like, we are programmers, we're not artists, so we're focusing on like game mechanics specifically. But I'm just curious, like, what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I think you have to have a relatively complete experience that's representative of your final product. Like, it doesn't have to be the full game, but I think it's important for people to be able to play the game and know what your target is, right? It can't be that, you just have a few mechanics thrown together they're just kind of loosely sprinkled with some art. In our case, we tried to get the bulk of our features implemented so that people could see where we were going with the game and also have a rough plan for finishing the rest of the features. And I think that for us, that was important for establishing trust with the community. Early access is kind of a hot button topic because of some high profile, not good situations that have happened in the past. So it was really important for us to over communicate and be transparent and give people enough that they would trust that we were going to follow through on that experience. So can't really answer like what exactly that means for you, but you should probably think about if your experience represents where you're going with the game, even if it doesn't quite look how you want it to. In our game, we're still planning to replace like probably 20% of our levels, before we ship with final levels. So I think that it's very helpful to get that feedback, and I'm a huge advocate of early access. We're doing it both on PC and Xbox, and it's been nothing but beneficial to the game's development. And if you can get the community involved, which is hugely important in early access, constant communication, implementing feedback from the players, that's the other secret to success, I think.
Cool.
I have no comment on this. I'm really curious. You guys have?
I can't directly address the early access portion, but regarding, especially coming from a programming standpoint, prior to the current project I'm working on, I was one of the artists on Jonathan Blow's The Witness, and when I first came onto the project, that game was fully playable front to back, modeled out of cubes, and it was fun. And I spent a couple days before I even started modeling anything, just playing it and trying to absorb the experience, and it was a worthwhile experience. But then again, that game is all about the gameplay. It wasn't about the graphics. The graphics were in service of the gameplay. So depending on your philosophical standpoint of whether gameplay is primary or secondary, I think you can still make a compelling experience without having a single finished asset in the game. So for whatever that's worth.
Complete experience, like Jesse said. Yeah.
Okay, my turn, I guess. So when you're working on like with a big team, one that's more than like 2 people, and you work
Not you,
like,
Ikrima.
yeah, that was kind of a pointed comment. Yeah, and so when you're working with your like very esoteric skill set and just working on just like one specific thing for your game, like, do you feel like your own creative idea is like being realized in your game?
But not
Well,
two people, so.
I guess it depends. You know, from my experience, I'm a tech artist by background, visual effects artist. So I worked in film where my 3 months of work was 3 seconds. And, you know, sometimes it was hard to feel like I contributed overall to the movie. But in the end, you know, when you look back at everything that goes into the project, and if what you're doing, your creative touches that go into it, made that portion of it better, then I think you should feel pretty good about that. You know, when I was at Sony working on DC Universe, that was a very big MMO, and I was the lead technical artist, and I also did some VFX. So occasionally I would get things like, hey, make the sky better. I'm like, well, okay, what do you want it to look like? I don't know, you just make it better. And it's like, cool. So I get to like get creative and figure out for this scene, like, what do I want the sky to look like? You know, so I think there's always an opportunity to put your own touch on something, even if it is a large team. It's just kind of finding out like where the boundaries are and where you can, you know, bend the rules or put your own thumbprint on something.
Awesome.
Cool. We've got. Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
I would just add that to me, the single most truthy thing about game development is that it's a collaboration.
Yep.
And if you can't let go and trust, you're going to be an unhappy game developer.
Yeah, and there's a reason you're on the team, right? Like you're a heavy contributor. The product won't be the product without you there. That's kind of the goal.
Right.
Yep.
Yep.
Cool. All right, we've got 5 minutes left too, so we're just gonna do a quick last thing here. First off, I just want to say thanks everybody for joining us for this panel today. This has been a lot of fun, a lot of good insight here. But before we go, I wanted each of you to just give like a quick one piece of advice for developers out there, whatever it is. So something you've learned in the past. If you could tell a developer of any skill set, one thing that you know, one thing that you've learned, what would that be? Anyone can start, not just you.
So I would say just try and achieve your aim, and kind of it's kind of touched on it earlier, but it's okay to fail. Just fail quickly, and you know, in my career in games, there's been a number of occasions where something's come down to me that we want to try and achieve in the game, and you might think that it's impossible. But once you have achieved the impossible several times over, you start to look at those situations and say, well, it sounds like that's impossible, but actually we should give it a go, because failing is better than not giving it a go at all. Because more often than not, you'll prove yourself wrong, you know, and that's what kind of we're trying to do with Hellblade at the moment, is trying to achieve something that looks and feels as good as anything out there with a small team. And so far, you know, it's going well. Will it all work out in the end? We hope so, but we don't know. But we'll have a really good go at it. And I think that's kind of the independent spirit there is at the moment. You know, you look at some of the games out there that have been huge successes, like you know, Goat Simulator. Like who would have said that game would have been a huge success? But the team that made that stuck to it, had a vision, and look where that game is now. You know, so I just say, if there's something that you really believe in, and you think it's you think you can make it with it, then just go for it.
I would like to chime in on that, as I think it's. One advice is like, don't fall in love with your own ideas, because that leads to all kinds of conflicts. And at the same time, you should be very unselfish with your ideas. So like you should really, once you throw an idea to the rest of the team, you should let go of its ownership and let the idea have a life on its own with the teams. And that's a really difficult thing to do, actually, for most people, because you really get attached to your own ideas. But if you manage to let go of it and let it grow with the team, then you get ownership from everybody, and the idea grows and gets bigger. And after a while, you got yourself a game that everybody likes.
I'll go. I would say don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone and even your area of expertise. I entered this project from a pure art creation background, and here's your plug, Chance. Unreal has allowed me to be a pretty powerful technical artist.
All right.
Rang the de facto technical artist for our entire team, and not only was it totally achievable, but it's also really fun. And I had no idea prior to this project that was something that would make game production that much easier. So.
This is just something I think that applies to life, but is really applicable in game development, is don't plan too much before you start working, because you're going to quickly discover that your plan was wrong, and you're going to need to make some adjustments in some factor. You may have gotten a lot of it right, but until you actually start implementing stuff or start testing out some of your ideas, you're not going to know the things that aren't working yet. And you can waste a lot of time if you're stuck in planning or thinking or think space before you actually start getting your hands dirty with stuff.
Cool.
I would say strive for excellence in whatever you're doing. I think we've found that over the last year, just as a general life thing, that it pays off dividends in exponential ways, in compounding ways. And it's kind of, obviously, like what we're doing now, we're a quality excellence driven team, and so it's very important that everything we do, the game, the visuals, the mechanics, everything is super excellent. But that's kind of both me and Corey's personalities, perfectionism, and it has its bad downsides and needs to be checked. But because that's our personalities and everything we've done in our endeavors and our hobbies, we've been able to, those skill sets kind of meld together to help us. So for example, Corey did audio. He's doing all our audio, and that's just because when he was in his 20s, he was really into audio, and he just got really obsessed about it. So now he can do all our audio. When I was younger, I was obsessed with doing art. So, I'd spent, years and years doing Max and Maya stuff, and even though now I'm a developer and on the technical side, it's super helpful that I know how to use my way around Maya, and we can, fix stuff, do some dynamics, some terrible art here and there. So just striving in excellence in whatever you're doing will pay off dividends down the road.
Thanks again, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us, and all y'all on Twitch. Really appreciate it. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.